Kyle Hamilton got real on the Baltimore Ravens, including how he thinks the team can still win the Super Bowl, the vibes around the team, and so much more. We talk about that, as well as the media burying Lamar Jackson's MVP campaign for some reason. All that and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on this bonus edition of the show, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form, where you can like and subscribe. Also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe over there as well. Same show, both audio and video. We are a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, plus more, obviously, with bonus episodes, live shows after games, big news, and so much more. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We have some stuff to talk about here today. Ravens obviously on their bye week, so we're not talking about any stressful Sundays, although I guess it's kind of stressful considering how the team left for their bye week. Hopefully they come back and everything's a little bit more organized and just feels a little better. It doesn't feel right now. And we're going to talk about Kyle Hamilton, one of the Punchline podcast with Marlon Humphrey and Jack Suttleman. They do a great job over there, so be sure to check it out. We're going to be talking about what Kyle Hamilton had to say about the vibes around the team right now, Super Bowl chances for the Ravens, and he also threw a funny Marlon Humphrey story in there. Well, some people found it funny. Other people were not having it with Marlon in this situation. But we'll get into all of that. Then we'll also talk about the media thinking Lamar Jackson's MVP campaign is over. Talk about that in the second part of the show because I'm definitely not going that far. Then finally, we'll do a Ravens bye week check-in and kind of assess where this team is right now from a whole perspective, offense, defense, special teams, what needs to change, what's working, and a lot more. So let's talk about Kyle Hamilton's comments here. First of all, I think, Kyle Hamilton was very real and very candid about what was going on with the Ravens. And obviously, he didn't get into all the juicy details about, the drama that's going on, this, that, and the other. But he did kind of hint that, it's a different type of season this year. And first of all, he didn't make excuses for the record, says, yeah, the record shows that the Ravens have 5 losses. We have 5 losses and not going to make excuses for that. But he did say that he still feels like the Ravens have a good chance to win the Super Bowl. And I don't disagree. I mean, I think the Ravens do have a shot to win the Super Bowl. I don't think they can win it playing like they are now and having the vibes they have now. I think that stuff does have to get ironed out over the bye week. But I think this is a much more wide open AFC or wide open just NFL in general than it is almost being made out to be. So I'm not saying that Baltimore is playing Super Bowl football right now. They're not. I'd be the first to tell you. I think a lot of people will be the first to tell you that. But the last hope, the last-ditch effort for this team could be maybe the bye week can fix some things. But Kyle Hamilton did say, vibe-wise, it's a different vibe this year because we didn't really face too much adversity last year. We were just rolling from the jump. I think we'll be better for that. This is something I've been saying for a while on Locked On Ravens. I agree with Kyle Hamilton in this situation where, first of all, every season is a new season. I think that stuff we've talked about here on this show before is last year felt like the year. Felt like they had the roster, felt like they had the coaching staff. The vibes were there. They were dominating teams and rolling through, steamrolling teams by 40 almost every week. It just felt like that was such a well-oiled machine and like that was going to be the Super Bowl team for the Ravens. Well, now you have a situation where all of a sudden there's a little bit more drama this season in terms of Marcus Williams apparently not being happy, Eddie Jackson not being happy, Deontay Johnson with this whole thing. And the Ravens aren't dominating teams like they were last season, where last year, what were the games where the Ravens actually had to face some adversity, come back, or have a tough loss? Obviously, those early season losses, the Colts hurt, the Browns game was tough, obviously the Pittsburgh game. But really, other than that, I mean, the Rams game was a big adversity moment. That's when Tylan Wallace had to punt up the sideline. That was huge in overtime. That was a game where, Lamar led that game-tying drive, and that felt like, that's a big building moment. But then you're like blowing out the Dolphins, you're blowing out the 49ers, you're blowing out all these teams, and it didn't feel like they were facing a ton of adversity. And then they blew out the Texans in the divisional round, and you're thinking, all right, this team's just going to buzzsaw through everybody. And then the AFC Championship game hit. You face some adversity, you get punched in the mouth a little bit, and you don't know how to act. And that's how their season ended last year. This year, if there's any silver lining to take out of some of the struggles, the inconsistencies they've had, is that they're able to identify them earlier and get over those humps earlier, I would say, where the AFC Championship game, that was the first time a lot of those issues popped up in that specific season. I'm not saying we haven't seen stuff like that in the past under John Harbaugh, this, that, and the other, but I'm saying that specific season, they were just so dominant last year that a lot of those issues didn't pop up until the AFC Championship game. Then you're in the third quarter of the biggest game of your life, and you're like, oh, we have to fix these things we haven't tried to fix all season. That's difficult. I think if you're looking at the silver lining, it is a little better to go through that stuff now and assess during the regular season, the bye week, figure out how to respond to those things. Now it's up to the team, coaching staff, players, organization to respond to it accordingly and respond to it effectively. And if you can't, obviously you're not going very far in the playoffs. But if you're able to do that, if you're able to identify those issues now, especially because I feel like losses do bring this stuff to the surface more than wins do, where we've seen it multiple times this season, right? Where even in those Bengals wins, we were on here and the Cowboys win and some of those close wins where, a win is a win, right? You take it 100% because obviously an ugly win is better than a pretty loss. But it still felt like there were issues, but we weren't talking about them as much because, they won the game. They were able to overcome. Once you lose games due to certain things, those things come to the surface. They're much more talked about within the organization, among the players, obviously among media, fans, whatnot. They have 5 of those this season, plus a bunch of those close wins. So when you're talking about maybe you're in a big back and forth, punches are flying from both teams game in the playoffs, and I think they're better equipped for that this season. Does that mean that they're going to go and win the Super Bowl this season? I don't know the answer to that. I think they have a shot to, as I said, and I agree with Kyle Hamilton, where sure, they have a chance to win the Super Bowl, most definitely. But I do think that it hinges on them playing much better when it comes to a lot of just basic things, them not being their own worst enemy with penalties or stalling themselves out or decision-making both by players and by coaches. They're all things that, yes, you need to correct them, but I'd rather them identify those weaknesses and correct them during the regular season than I would in the playoffs. So again, as I mentioned, this is not Super Bowl football the Ravens are playing right now. I'm not trying to get up here and tell you, all this stuff that the Ravens are doing right now, it's going to be okay because in the playoffs, they're just going to turn it on. I want to see it first, right? You have 4 games to prove to a lot of people that, you know what, was a weird season heading into the bye week, but they were able to fix it. They were able to get back on track, and they were able to have honest and serious conversations. Not that conversations haven't been happening throughout the entire season. I mean, look, we've seen the dramas. The conversations have certainly been happening. But I just feel like from a bigger perspective, from when you're talking about the big moments, this Ravens team, the MO has been under Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh, even at times recently, because the Super Bowl was more than a decade ago. It's okay, great regular season team. They can't put it together fully in the playoffs. They haven't been back to the Super Bowl since they won it back in 2012, right? We were talking about AFC Championship game last year. They got that, and they figured that out, and they were able to get back. But you still haven't been back to the Super Bowl since you won it over a decade ago. That's not going to cut it for a lot of people. And frankly, a lot of coaches probably would have not been on the same team in those situations. I think it's always been the regular season record, this, that, and the other. And I'm not putting it all on John Harbaugh. Please don't get me wrong with that. I think John Harbaugh is to blame. I think the players are to blame. I think, the organization, decision makers, everybody's to blame for that. Everybody plays a role. But how long are we going to go on with this? They played great in the regular season, and they're not even playing that great this year in the regular season. Like, they're playing fine. The offense is historic. The offense is great. I think when I say they're not playing that great, I'm saying they're not playing like consistently historic on all sides of the ball. We saw that defensively last year. They were historic. I'm comparing it to last season. The offense as a whole has been great. Obviously struggled the last couple of weeks, and they need to figure that out. but the defense was awful, pass defense-wise. First 2.5 months of the season, they've turned it on. So if we can see that ascension from everybody and not have 1 unit off and 2 units on or 2 units off, 1 unit on, if they can be consistent, that's a really big stretch heading into the playoffs. So offense has played great for the most part. Run defense has been great all season. Pass defense, not so great, but I think they're working through that, and they've been a lot better. So they haven't been that great compared to last year, right? But I think a lot of teams aren't that great compared to last year's 2023 Baltimore Ravens team. So they have a chance, but we're going to see if they can capitalize on it. But again, the vibes, they're weird right now. I'm glad Kyle Hamilton kind of acknowledged that, because it's true. I mean, we all see it. It's right in front of our faces. And obviously, sometimes you got to go through that. Obviously, 2012 had some drama. I'll be consistent in saying it's not quite this level of drama. It feels like this is much more individual goal-based, whereas the drama in 2012 was much more team goal-based. But still, no locker room is going to be 100% peaceful. Everybody loves each other. It's just not how it works. So we'll see how they respond. But coming up in the second part of the show, obviously, we've been talking about Lamar Jackson all season for MVP, and a lot of people now think that his MVP campaign is over. We talk about why they think that and why it's not true. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, this show is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite, and right now you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites from legendary steaks, mouth-watering desserts, and more. Save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. And the show is brought to you by Skylight Frames. I come from a big family personally, and it can be hard sometimes and sometimes expensive to buy each person a personal gift for the holidays. And sometimes you got anniversaries you got to get to for the holidays, birthdays. We've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frames is a touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. You have seamless sharing. You can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. And they're a top-rated brand. Over 1 million happy customers, thousands of 5-star reviews, and available in over 30 countries. Recommended by the Today Show, Forbes, New York Magazine, and more. And now is a special limited time offer for our listeners. Get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin IceShaker still here with you on this bonus edition of the show. Appreciate everybody again for tuning in, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every day. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form, as well as follow along in audio form. Same show, both audio and video. And tell a friend, tell a family member. We have them covered with daily Ravens coverage. If they're a Ravens fan, if they want the Ravens perspective on something, we have you covered with all that here on the show. Now, Lamar Jackson's put together an incredible season. MVP conversation, front runner for most of the season here. But feels like after these last couple of weeks, Lamar has fallen for a lot of people in the MVP rankings. A lot of people talking about Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley in that. And Lamar's kind of fallen still in the conversation, but almost an afterthought at this point. And to me, I just feel like it's a little ridiculous that we are punishing Lamar Jackson for one bad game. Really 2 bad games if you want to talk about Pittsburgh and Philly. But here's the thing, right? Remember Josh Allen went 9 for 30 earlier in the season, and he really didn't get roasted for that. He really didn't get roasted for that. Whereas Lamar Jackson, he has a bad game, and all of a sudden, oh, well, everybody's jumping on the Lamar Jackson hate train, and let's go rag on and pile on Lamar Jackson. Yes, we can acknowledge that over these last couple of weeks, the offense hasn't been as historic as it's been, and Lamar struggled against Pittsburgh and Philly in multiple different ways, most definitely. But then, you have a lot of people talking about, this is Josh Allen's award to lose, and Saquon Barkley this. Look, Josh Allen and Saquon Barkley both have incredible MVP conversations as well. Like, they are firmly in it with Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying that, it's Lamar Jackson and nobody else. Nobody else can hold a candle to Lamar. I'm not saying that. This is going to be a very close MVP race. I think that, look, if Josh Allen wins it, he'll deserve it. If Saquon wins it, he'll deserve it too. But if Lamar wins it, I think he is the most deserving because, again, you talk about most valuable player and a lot of these stars, right? You take them off their teams and the ceiling and the floor just plummets. You take that with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and the star quarterbacks of the league, Saquon, Derrick Henry. You take them off their teams and their floor plummets. But it just feels like with Lamar, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing because he is so valuable to this team. And look, we've seen the Ravens without Lamar Jackson. We've seen, look, every team has seen their team without their quarterback, right? But it just feels like for Lamar, it's not even like, oh, well, his stats have just plummeted over the past 2 weeks. And he's all of a sudden, now he's only top 10 in all these conversations like passing yards, passing touchdowns. It hasn't been that. Like right now, he's still number 1 in PFF offensive passing grade. He's number 2 in passing yards. He has the second least interceptions in the league. He's number 2 in passing touchdowns, number 1 in yards per attempt. I actually think Jared Goff may have passed him on Thursday night for passing yards. So maybe now he's number 3. But it'd be one conversation if Lamar had fallen like 8 spots in the rankings, right? You go and you say, all right, he was number 1 a lot. Now he's number 8 or number 9 or number 10. We're not having that conversation with Lamar. And look, I can understand where this is coming from because in the 2 weeks Lamar Jackson has struggled, Pittsburgh and Philly, like we've said, Josh Allen has had 2 signature season moments where obviously when Lamar lost to Pittsburgh and the Ravens lost to Pittsburgh, Josh Allen had that incredible 4th down run for a touchdown. They dethroned the Chiefs. They hand them, their first loss, right? That was a big, okay, well, Lamar struggled against Pittsburgh and Josh Allen had this big MVP moment that I think skewed some opinions. And then obviously this past week, Josh Allen and the Bills, you talk about these signature moments and Lamar doesn't really have that. But then the Bills go out there and, they're able to figure things out and, again, decimate the 49ers. Yeah, that's another, okay, Josh Allen went crazy and Lamar didn't. And so when you're talking about the MVP race, and obviously Saquon was the one that beat Lamar. He's the NFC player who was both on that Giants team and on the Eagles team that beat Lamar Jackson. So RIP the Daniel Jones agenda. It's been a sad week for me in that stat. But regardless, it just feels like, what have you done for me now lately, league? Sometimes that can go too far. And for Lamar, again, acknowledgement that he struggled and the offense has struggled. And Josh Allen has done his thing when he's needed to step up and kind of take a lead there. But at the end of the day, if Lamar doesn't win MVP, it'd be disappointing, especially if he's the one that deserves it most. But it's not the be-all, end-all at the end of the day, right? Like, obviously, the bigger thing is Super Bowl MVP, getting to the Super Bowl, playoff success. And with the other thing, the big conversation with Josh Allen and Saquon versus Lamar, and this is a real thing. I'm not trying to discredit this whatsoever, but it's the record, right? It's the record. Lamar's team is 8-5 right now, right? The Bills, you talk about their record, they're a lot better than 8-5. They're a team that only has 2 losses this season, right? They only have 2 losses, and that plays a part. I mean, it's part of the reason why we're not talking about Joe Burrow in the MVP conversation, because that Bengals team has 8 losses. They're under 500. Whereas for Josh Allen, if it's close between Lamar and Josh Allen, people will probably favor the record of Josh Allen being right now 10-2, whereas the Ravens are 8-5 over Lamar. And it's the same thing with the Eagles and Saquon, right? The Eagles are 10-2 right now. The Ravens are 8-5. That's a big conversation throughout all of sports. So again, trying to just identify and understand all the angles where this conversation could be had. I still think Lamar Jackson is the most valuable player in football, but there are so many other conversations, and I'm not trying to sit here and discredit Josh Allen like other people do with Lamar Jackson, right? That's the other part of this, where it's a holistic view, right? You bring in a lot of conversations to it. Stats are a big part of it. Records a big part of it. How many people are watching these MVP moments? That's a part of it. Supporting cast, that's a part of it. And honestly, Lamar's been just obliterated at points during his career for not having a supporting cast, and that hasn't been fair to himself. But again, there are all these things that go into it. I do not think Lamar Jackson's MVP campaign is over. There is still a long way to go with this. But again, I'm not getting too worked up over the whole situation because Lamar would tell you he would trade his MVPs for a Super Bowl. He would trade his MVPs for playoff wins. MVPs are great. And I know that everybody, when we talk about, when Lamar deserves an award, he deserves the award. When someone else deserves the award, they deserve the award. That's what I'm trying to fight for here. If Lamar doesn't deserve the award, he doesn't deserve the award. But right now, I think he is still firmly in that conversation. And by no means has Lamar played himself out of the MVP conversation. I think that we were just talking about Jared Goff, right, through 5 interceptions. And people were like, oh, he's done. And now he's had a couple good weeks, and now he's back in the MVP conversation. Where's that energy, right? Where's that energy? So we'll see what happens over the last 4 weeks of the season. But Lamar obviously is going to have a lot to prove, and he's already proven so much, right? He's already proven so much over the course of his career, but it just feels like he has to prove things week in and week out, even when he doesn't really have to. And that, to me, is kind of another conversation that we've talked about for a while here on the show and gotten into. We're coming up on the final part of the show. We'll talk about a little bit of a bye-week check-in, discussing some of the things that have happened for this team, where they are, and what they need to fix. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, the show is brought to you by IceShaker. Hey, Locked On Ravens fans, I know you're like me and your holiday shopping list is, let's just say, far from complete. Well, if that's the case, I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fans in your life. Perhaps you've heard of IceShaker. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and will make the ideal gift. Created by and used by the Gronkowski brothers, IceShakers has sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with workout bottles, and this is the gift you've been looking for. Go to IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% on your order. They have kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like the plastic bottles do, and they're third-party tested, will hold ice for 30-plus hours. Order your team branded bottles today at IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. IceShakers, show your support for your teams with the best brand of workout bottles on the market, IceShakers. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So to get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats with play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. So for that Ravens and Eagles game, I did think the Ravens defense played well overall, but Saquon Barkley did get the over on his rushing yards. So if you had that over on FanDuel, you're probably living large. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin IceShaker still here with you on this bonus edition. Appreciate everybody again for being here and tuning into Locked On Ravens. The support has been incredible. Video form, we're almost at 10,000 subscribers. And again, once we hit that, going to wear a Dixie Cup outfit for a week. Said that my first day doing the show back in 2021 in video form. And now here we are, 2024, almost 2025, and almost a really big goal. So appreciate everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe in video form and audio form. Started off that obviously a couple years before video form. That's where the show started up for me back in 2019. Audio community has been absolutely incredible, and that continues to grow each and every single day. Let's talk about a little bye week check-in for the Ravens here as they get out of it in a couple of days and hopefully are able to get back on track. This offense, again, has been really, really, really good this year. Historic levels on multiple different fronts. They're the #1 pass offense in the league and the #1 rush offense in the league, averaging 7.9 yards per attempt passing-wise and 5.7 yards per attempt rushing-wise. I mean, that's incredible. And I think it's a little shocking that we've seen the fall off a little bit over these last couple of weeks. Now, the Ravens also love just being #1 because defensively, they are the #1 rushing defense in the league, just 3.5 yards per carry on the ground given up, and they face some very good running backs. Passing defense, not as good. They're 23rd in the league, but they have been one of the best pass defenses in the league over the last 3 weeks. Obviously, a lot of that stems from personnel changes and being able to identify weak links and either cut guys or bench guys that aren't getting it done. So you move Kyle Hamilton more into a deep role, and you put Ardarius Washington in, you trade for Tre'Davious White. Those have all been moves that have helped. And I think if you would talk to your past self, maybe yourself from August, and you outlined all the changes that Baltimore's gone through on that side of the ball in the secondary, your past self might be like, no way. There's no way that happened. It's kind of that unbelievable that they had to make all those changes. But look, I think the organization is much more proactive than they've been in recent seasons, especially under Eric DeCosta. And if something's not working, you're out of there. They're going to find someone else that can do the job. And Marlon Humphrey has echoed that. A lot of others have echoed that as well. I think one of the big things to look at is, again, they're the number 3 scoring offense in the league, number 1 in yards, number 2 in first downs. They don't turn the ball over. They're number 3 in turnovers, passing touchdowns, yards, everything, scoring percentage, like everything is great. Yards per drive, points per drive. The thing, though, is they're doing it pretty efficiently because they're actually 21st in plays per drive and time of possession, they're 14th. So it's not like they're taking up all this clock, this, that, and the other. They are actually going down the field and scoring pretty efficiently. And it just feels like for this team on offense, when they get on a roll, they get on a roll. Sometimes it can take them a little while to heat up, and other times they heat up and then they fizzle out. That, to me, is one of the things they have to fix. Can they be more consistent? We've been talking about this now for essentially 2 years with the Todd Monken offense. Can they be consistent? Can they play a full 60 minutes of football? They've done it over the course of Todd Monken's 2 years. They've done it a lot, but they've also not done it a lot. And that is, I think, the concerning part for a lot of people. It's like, well, how do you kind of fix that and be more consistent with being consistent is, I guess, what I'm trying to say there. I think the other thing here is you talk about third down percentage. They're great on offense. They're third in the league in third down percentage. They're the number 1 red zone offense in the league, 75% conversion percentage. That is unreal. That is unreal. The fact that this team has 5 losses with a 75% completion percentage in the red zone is absolutely unbelievable. But I think some of their early season defensive struggles, some of the inconsistency we've seen on offense in recent weeks obviously contributes to a lot of that. Defensively, they're 25th in third down percentage given up. So they're allowing teams to convert on 42.9% of their third down. So that's something that I think coming out of the bye week, Baltimore could stand to improve. 17th in the red zone defense for the Ravens. So, I mean, it's not terrible, but not great. Kind of middle of the league, right at middle of the league average there. Big thing to me, though, defensively, is they're not really a turnover forcing defense. Only 11 turnovers forced this season. Marlon Humphrey obviously has had a great year in terms of interceptions, but this isn't really an opportunistic defense in terms of turnovers, where we saw they've had seasons in the past. We know this. When that defense is historic, they're turning the ball over left and right. They're giving their offense more opportunities, and it doesn't really feel like Baltimore has been doing that this season. Feels like, yeah, sure, certain games they're forcing offenses, to punt the ball away and give those offenses opportunities like that. The offensive units Baltimore's had this year, whatever type of version you want to talk about. But I feel like coming out of the bye, emphasis on turnovers is going to be really, really big, because they've had some huge turnovers this year, right? Nate Wiggins stripping CeeDee Lamb on a completion early in the year. Marlon Humphrey with a couple of big interceptions and fumbles. You got Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. Like, those are big, big moments. So I think if you can get back to that and force more turnovers down the stretch and obviously into the playoffs, that's a big, big thing. Special teams wise, oh boy. A lot of stuff to fix special teams wise, most definitely. Obviously, you start off with Justin Tucker. That whole situation just has to be fixed, whether it's Tucker, the hold, whatever, has to be fixed. 70% completion percentage on his field goals this season, or conversion rate, worst of his career by far. Missed 10 kicks. We've talked forever about that conversation. I also think kick return coverage, punt return coverage, punt returns, kick returns, all that has to be fixed. For a unit and a team that prides themselves so much on special teams, it's been pretty disappointing in terms of how that unit has looked over the course of the last few seasons. So special teams has to be fixed, most definitely. And then coaching-wise, less weird play calls from Todd Monken. John Harbaugh has made some questionable decisions this season. There's just better decision-making in general, and then obviously the big one, or at least one of the big ones, is penalties. Got to fix the penalties. It's just been incredible. They were good last week against Philly with penalties, only 4, but over the course of the year, it has not been great. So some great things the Ravens are doing, some not so great things the Ravens are doing. Hopefully they can emphasize the good and fix the bad coming out of their bye week. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show today. And again, we'll be back here on Locked On Ravens. More Ravens coverage coming your way. So on the way up, you should hit that like and subscribe button in video form, and follow along and subscribe in audio form. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.